goddamn, I need IPA.
This is Beering Ain't Easy, your podcast for beer humor, dad humor, and beer tastings from Texas and beyond. So crack one if you got one and turn it up.
Welcome to Beering Ain't Easy, Season 2, Episode 21, with Ryan and Drew.
Welcome back, y'all. We have got a great episode today. Ryan, have you gone out and gotten gas lately?
I have. Have you?
It's a son of a bitch out there.
It really is. Although it looks like they're starting to come back down, so like fingers crossed.
So craft beer has been cheaper than gas lately. And so there's a lot of warning signs out there. High gas, high inflation. I think we're about to go into a recession. What do you think?
Yeah, that's what all the doomsday headlines seem to say. And then you see one randomly pop up, be like, oh, this guy says, don't worry about it. We're fine.
Well, you know what, Ryan? That's not going to be us. We're a doomsday podcast, damn it.
Hey, cheers to that.
So today we are going to talk about recession beers. So what I'm talking about is what is the key to success as a brewery in the recession? What is our expert opinion on what the craft beer industry is going to deal with if the economy starts tanking even more than it is right now? But first, we have got some beer news discussion to talk about here. So Ryan, we've got massive breweries selling out to macro companies. We've got Houston breweries changing ownership hands left and right. So we've got former brewers coming back to be a part of a brewery that they left years ago. We've got brewery patrons that are just often making the decision to buy a brewery on a whim. I ask you, Ryan, is this a soap opera of beer proportions? Or is this the Houston beer market? We're the Beering Ain't Easy podcast, and these are the days of Houston beer.
You almost couldn't make up these storylines with how like all of a sudden everything is just the sands are shifting.
So while we're here, Ryan, you want to introduce our very time appropriate beers today?
So I'm drinking Wicked Weed Coastal Love. It's a hazy IPA. I just got back from a family trip to Florida, so brought back some beers from there, and I know our astute listeners will immediately throw up a red flag saying, you know, Wicked Weed sold out to AB InBev. They're not a craft beer. And you're right, they're not. And I'm drinking it specifically because of this episode talking about breweries and selling out.
That's a very appropriate choice. I'm drinking a local edition of the change of ownership topic that we're about to get into, what I like to call the juicy Houston gossip. So I am drinking Vulgar Display of Power, a Russian Imperial Stout brewed with vanilla bean from the one and only Brash Brewing, which is now under the ownership of Equal Parts Brewing. And as my backup beer, I've got a Loggerbier German-style Pilsner on the wings for the combo of the two beers. I haven't decided if I'm going to mix them yet, but it wouldn't put it past me.
Yeah, I'm looking down at my status bar, and it says it's 96 degrees right now. So I think about halfway through that Vulgar Display of Power, you might be looking for ways to lighten it up.
Yeah, cut it with the Pilsner. So I think we should start on the macro level here. I think we should start about the big boys. So you talked about Wicked Weed. What else have we got out there in the beer world that's some big changes?
Well, I mean, my backup beer is Floridian wheat beer by Funky Buddha, who sold the Constellation brands. That's my other macro Florida, fake craft beer, which Constellation Brands is the company that kind of started this whole like cataclysmic like craft breweries getting sold up thing when they bought Ballast Point for $1 billion, which I think they subsequently like ended up selling Ballast Point for like 100 million or something. Like, basically took a huge loss on that deal. But I feel like maybe it was just because I was pretty new to craft beer at that time, but I feel like that was like one of the biggest sales that like ever happened in craft beer. Do you agree with that, or what are your thoughts?
That's definitely the one that paved the way for everybody else. I feel like it was the splash sale.
Yeah. If we're looking at most recent, I think what prompted us to go ahead and do this episode was the announcement that Stone was selling.
Oh yeah.
Which that one always seemed like, the attitude, like they had the attitude that was kind of like, fuck the big guys, like we're going to do our own thing. And like, yeah. So it's pretty shocking to me that they sold out at this point.
Not only that, but I read that they used to have, like, on their mission statement on their website, they had this audio clip talking about how they would never sell out and that they were eternally independent. But I don't think that can be found on their website anymore.
Hopefully someone grabbed a screenshot of that.
Yeah, man. One of my favorite Instagram accounts is called Hayes Boys, and he had like a whole series of memes about Stone and the sellout, and it's just comedic gold.
The other huge one that I think was pretty surprising was when New Belgium sold out. I don't remember exactly how their ownership structure worked, but it was like if you were an employee there for X amount of time, you like basically were given a stake in the company. So it was like employee owned. And then I think when the wife of the founder, like I think it was a husband and wife that founded it. And I think when she decided to retire, I think she was what drove the selling out. Don't quote me on that. That's just what I seem to remember.
So when did they sell? I mean, I thought they were a while ago, and then didn't like Bell's get bought up by New Belgium, but they had already been, so they're all under this parent company now?
Late 2019.
Okay. And then last year they added Bell's to the portfolio. And I think the last one on the most recent list was Modern Times. And that one seemed like it was less about selling out to the big guy and more about financial stability. What do you know about that one?
Yeah. I mean, this one, the friend of the show, Wes, I went to San Diego for my bachelor party, as we talked about, and he was very insistent on going to Modern Times because he was all about their beer and loved their coffee and stuff. And I remember going there and just being like blown away by their beer. But yeah, they ended up going like across the country, opened up like eight locations or something, and then just overextended themselves and ended up closing half of them, and then ended up going into like a court ordered sale because they like couldn't pay any of their bills anymore. And so yeah, they ended up getting bought up by I forgot, there was some like big companies going after them, and then some random like smaller company got them.
Is it public record if you take PPP as a business? It makes me wonder if like some of these breweries were taking some money during COVID, and then once the free money train started running out, then alarm bells started going out. Like maybe we expanded too big.
Yeah, I mean that wouldn't surprise me. So actually, Brewery X won the bidding war for Modern Times, and that news didn't get posted until the end of June this year. So that's only a couple weeks old. That news.
Wow. You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, that Brewery X out of Anaheim, California.
It's a wild world, but I think enough about the nationwide beers. I think people are here to hear about the Houston drama, and there's no shortage of brewery drama and shakeups, and that's what we're here to bring you with our highly researched out commentary, as usual.
Yeah, we got to bring this home, which we talked about doing a brewery closure episode, and because we knew Bearded Fox, or we were like, oh yeah, Bearded Fox was closing, and then City Acre announced they were closing. And then I looked it up, and Bearded Fox's Instagram was still active. So after doing some research, it turns out the day before they were closing their doors, a patron ended up coming in and buying them up and kept them open. And it sounds like City Acre, was that a similar situation?
Absolutely. This is 2 bailouts in the Houston area by patrons. In the case of City Acre, it was a solar energy company guy that happened to go there that bought it up. Local businessman.
So yeah, it was after the Bearded Fox thing, we were like, oh yeah, we can't do an episode about brewery closings when one of our main ones didn't actually close. And then City Acre, goes off and pulls the same thing. So instead of a brewery closure episode, here we are with a brewery shakeup episode.
Yeah, brewery gossip and shakeup episode.
So I guess the only real closure to speak of is Six Wards Brewing. Did you ever have any Six Words beer? Ever go to their location?
I never made it out there. It was on the H-Town Brewery Challenge, but no more. One more off the list.
Same, yeah. We're part of the problem.
So to back up a step, we're going to talk about the closures, which Ryan just covered, which was only one closure. We're going to talk about the resuscitations, which Ryan just covered, but we're also going to talk about the ownership changes or the ones for sale, because there is a whole lot of those on the map. And I want you to hold that thought on the brewery patrons buying up a brewery, because we need to come back to the psychology of that and what makes a patron decide to up and buy a brewery on a whim. So before we get there, let's just go down the list. So I'm looking at my list here. So here's the shakeup. So Local Group Brewing sold out to new ownership. Their head brewer, Huggy Bear, which we met when we did the episode over at Bad Astronaut. He is a super nice guy. He is now the head brewer at Holler, and Holler is now under new ownership. So if you start losing track of me here, just rewind and listen again, because it gets bumpier from here. Next, we have Brash. So Brash had a dramatic couple weeks where they weren't sure how they were going to be sold or where or what. And they have been bought, as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, by Equal Parts. And they brought back one of the original head brewer who's been working over at Eighth Wonder. They brought him back over to run the operations. And so Equal Parts is going to keep Brash as two separate operations. So you're reuniting somebody who I think there was some sort of conflict involved when he left Brash the first time, but he's back with the same head brewer of Brash. So it's some strange stuff brewing in H-Town. But and then lastly, there's a couple that are either for sale or there's some warning signs fired out there. So we've got Copperhead Brewing. They've been for sale for a while. It's really hard to get a hold of their beer if you're not in North Houston, but they make some great stuff. B52, which is for sale. And the last one on the list is Buffalo Bayou, which they have not announced that they are for sale, but there was a little bit of drama in that their folks that invested in them have been notified that they will not get their investment back. How would you feel if you had invested in a brewery and they said that, sorry, but you're not getting your money back?
Yeah, obviously would be pretty upset. But when they sent out that notice about like basically defaulting on investor payments, it launched a huge kind of online like bashing session of Buff Brewer. Did you look into that at all or read any of that stuff?
You know I did.
So for probably the majority of people that didn't actually go down this rabbit hole, there's a lot of people posting online about the toxic culture at Buffalo Bayou, mainly due to the owner and him like just treating people like crap, not letting them have a work-life balance, flaunting like safety protocols, just like not wanting to be bothered by like anything. And yeah, it's actually kind of worth seeking it out and reading it because it seemed like it's a pretty bad situation. So I'll be curious to see how that whole situation works out.
Get your popcorn ready. Like, I think you got to take those kind of things with a grain of salt. You know, with my wife being in a small business, when things are going well or when things are going bad, there's going to be people that are going to pile on one way or the other, and haters are going to hate and come out of the woodwork. So without working there, I don't know the situation, but I do know they built the most giant mega brewery I've ever seen with a full kitchen and opened it up not far before the start of COVID. And so I got to think that is incredibly hard to continue to make enough money for the payments they're making on that loan.
Yeah, that's true. I seem to remember that this may have just been a rumor, but I had heard when they built that new facility that they were keeping the old facility as well. And we're going to use it as like their mixed fermentation kind of center. So they didn't have to like, use the wild yeast and get it kind of mixed in with all their regular stuff too. I don't know if that ever actually happened. But I can imagine if they're having trouble paying for one location that they aren't going to hang on to two locations.
Got to cut somewhere.
Who knows? This is just wild, irresponsible speculation on my part. So take it with a huge grain of salt.
So speaking of wild speculation, why do you think all this churn is happening right now? It seems like each reason is a little bit different. Some of them are more like my business is in trouble, which I would probably put, maybe local group, City Acre, Bearded Fox. I'd probably put those in that category. And then some of these other ones like B52 seems like they're doing really well and they're just looking to get out of the business. So why all the churn right now?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because like B52, when they on their listing, I got forwarded like the actual like sales materials for it, and they're selling the entire location, all the equipment, all the intellectual property, all the recipes. Like they're just straight up selling everything and walking away. I'd be curious to know what's going on there because that one seems kind of surprising.
Yeah, actually on that one, it sounds like they had one of the major players that opened up the brewery had passed away a couple years ago. And I think that maybe they've, they don't have the same heart into it ever since that happened. So I think that probably is an influence. But yeah, it seems like they've got a pretty sweet location up there. So I imagine someone will eventually jump in on that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, that explanation. But yeah, it's almost like with the COVID stuff that happened and, like everyone talked about like the great, I forgot what they called it, everyone leaving their jobs to kind of do something that they wanted to do. It seems like people would be going towards opening breweries, which I mean, we're seeing a lot about to open or stuff that did open. But yeah, it doesn't seem like you'd make it through COVID and you're kind of at the finish line and everything's going back to normal. And now all of a sudden everyone's like, all right, I'm done. I'm out. Yeah. It seems like now it's like, if you made it this far, you should be theoretically good, right?
Yeah. But I mean, I imagine they probably couldn't find any buyers during COVID. So maybe they wanted to sell 2 years ago and now it's like, okay, we got to get out of this business right now.
That's true.
Yeah,
it's gotten their ass kicked for 2 years straight and they're finally able to get out and they're like, thank God.
It's pretty wild though. Like even at work, there's so many people that are just like leaving their job and like going into something completely different. So they're like, hey, I'm an engineer now. I want to go start my own lawn company. Or, it's like weird shit. So maybe those brewers that are like, man, I'm going to be opening a brewery and this is what I've always wanted to be. And then all of a sudden they're like, no, dog, I'm ready for something new.
Like, yeah, I much prefer home brewing in my garage and not having to deal with all the other stuff that comes with it.
I never really liked dealing with customers, I kind of liked it when it was just me drinking at the garage.
The Great Resignation. That's what they called it.
Hell yeah. So last segment before we get into recession topic, I think we need to, when we talk about wild ass speculation, if you're a new ownership coming into these, you don't have to touch on every single brewery because we know we haven't been to 6 words. But if you were taking over, what is one thing you would change about some of these breweries? It could be any of them.
What I'm finding out now that, I mean, here in Houston, we just like shattered all like the high temperature records for June. It was like an extremely high temperatures every single day, all June. And what I found was how many breweries, they're all geared towards being outside or just like being in industrial space with like the garage doors open. There's really not that many breweries with like a big indoor air conditioned space. And with how hot it gets in Houston, I'm kind of, I get the outside idea, but I'm kind of surprised there's not more indoor venues. So I feel like that's one thing I would like want to do is make sure you get a space that you can come to in the middle, June, July, August.
Are you listening, Brash? So like when you talk about those spaces, usually when they're outside, they have like a nice draft, they have fans, it's open, you at least get a breeze. When you go to Brash, you're inside the warehouse. They do have some fans, but oh my God, it is a hot box. And when you're serving 14% Russian Imperial stouts, you are sweating dark chocolate out of there, man. And it is brutal. So if Equal Parts is listening, come on, man, put in the freaking AC.
Yeah,
ran over.
Brash's building, I don't think it's insulated at all. I think it's like literally just like sheet metal walls.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's really realistic, but I mean, at least put in like vents or something to get some airflow through the space. Because right now, it doesn't have that. Like I know, like 11 Below's in like a big warehouse, but they have huge doors on both ends. And you open all of them, they have the big ass fan in there, like overhead, so they're able to get a lot of airflow, and it works out really well. But yeah, some places definitely do not have that. What about you? What would you change?
I got a hot take here. So when I'm looking at the list here of some breweries that are maybe not making ends meet as well as they'd like to, I see Local Group, which has a full kitchen. I see Buffalo Bayou. They've got a full kitchen. And I also see City Acre, which also has a full restaurant inside. And so I think the cheaper model is to go with the food truck, because if you're paying to have all the permits, you're cooking, you have to maintain the kitchen, you got to make sure you don't have slime in your ice machine. I mean, there's a whole lot of shit that goes with that. And I think to recession proof your brewery, you may need to get out of the kitchen business.
I think you're spot on. Like the margins on restaurants are so small, and that's not your primary business. It's like, why mess with that? Why even mess with that side of it? So yeah, it seems like kind of crazy, honestly, to even like want to do that.
And don't get me wrong, the food is way better at those places. Like City Acre, that food was probably my favorite part of my experience there. But if it's dragging you down, then you got to cut it loose. You got to get the balance sheet balanced.
Yeah, Local Group's kitchen was really good too.
Yeah,
I always liked eating there.
I will, since I mentioned City Acre, I will mention that when we covered that on the H-Town Brewery Challenge, when we went there, it just felt like when they put the brewery in, they breathed a little life into it, and then that they hadn't done anything with it since then. There was like not a lot of draws there. There were no TVs. It was just, it looked kind of like older on the inside. So I think they just need someone to come in and breathe a little more energy into that space. How do you compete with all these other 50 plus breweries in the city? Do you know what Local Group did as one of their first orders of business under new management?
What's that?
They put wine on tap. So they're diversifying what they're selling. So they've got a nice brand new setup there. They're going to have beer, but maybe they're going to try to draw, people with different tastes in their alcohol. I don't know. They're pivoting.
That's a good idea.
Any thoughts on Buff Brew, what they should do?
Sell. Get that owner out of there, apparently. I'm gonna dog on Buffalo Bayou for a second, because they've always called themselves Houston's most creative brewery, and yeah, they have some really unique stuff, but they haven't come out with new unique stuff, I feel like, in years. It's the same unique things. Like, when does it cease to be unique if it's the same beer you've had on tap for 10 years?
That's really true. Like, you go there and it's the same rotating schedule that they've had for as long as I can remember. And there's not a lot of them where I'm like, damn, that's a really fantastic one. They're just interesting. There's like a lot of interesting pastry stouts, but there's not as many crushable options that they've got out there.
Yeah, they used to do a Christmas in July party every year, and it was kind of like all you could drink for a few hours. And they would have the same base beer, and they would have like 6 different fruits, and they have like kegs of each of them. So you could go through and try it with all these different fruits, or like, different adjuncts or whatever. They do little variations of the same beer, and they just had like tons of those kind of stations, and you could just like try all this crazy stuff. And I haven't heard of them doing that in years. So they definitely used to do creative stuff, which was kind of the heart and soul of the company. And I feel like that kind of died. And now it's just like a normal brewery.
All right. In the last part of this segment, I had almost forgotten about it. We got to get inside the mind of a brewery patron who makes up their mind one day that they're going to buy a brewery. So back to what Ryan was saying, Bearded Fox sent out a note to everybody saying, sayonara, we're closing down. City Acre did the same. They said, it's been a great ride. We're out of here. And in both cases, somebody who was a regular at the brewery was like, I'm not going to let this brewery die, damn it. And then they buy it. So my question to you, Ryan, is, were they drinking beer when they made this decision? And do brewers come with the purchase, or are they just going to figure it out after they have the deed and whatever liens are on that property.
Nostalgia is a hell of a drug, man. Like, I get you're like, if you're a patron, you're like, oh, I love this place. I come here for a beer after work every day. I can't let them just close their doors. I'm going to buy them. You know, they're a failing business. So like you end up buying them, even though you know they're failing. I guess if you have a strong business background, you can figure out what the issues are and like try to fix them. But I'd be pretty nervous to do that.
And you probably got to come in with some capital too. I mean, and these are people, like I mentioned, one of them was like a solar business owner. So he understands running a business, but does he understand like the food and alcohol industry at all? And, you know, does he just think he's going to post an application for head brewer and they're going to sign up? Or maybe it was one of those sweetheart deals. It's like, I'll give you the brewery and I'll give you a head brewer, throw it in there.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. You know, you're going to have to float the business that's losing money until you figure out what the issue is.
Yeah.
If you're a patron that buys it, apparently you think the beer is good enough, so you don't think that's the issue, right? Because if you're like, I like coming here, the beer's not very good, like you're not going to buy the brewery, right?
That's true.
So apparently they think the brewery is good enough, the beer wise, and then you just have to like market it better or something. I'm not really sure.
Yeah. Either way, I mean, I'm all about having 50 plus breweries in Houston. So like more power to these patrons for keeping the hope alive. I just wouldn't be signing on that dotted line myself.
Yeah, I feel like I'm coming off as very negative this episode so far. But no, I'm definitely glad we were discussing before the episode how it was like sales to like macros, and now it's like sales between, you know, local people, which is definitely awesome. I'm glad these places are staying open, and I'm glad it's local people that are you know, carrying the torch.
Yeah, I'm super excited for Huggy Bear over at Holler, and I'm really actually excited about Brash because they've always been one to not distribute. They want everyone coming to the brewery, but then you look at Equal Parts and they distribute a lot, and so I think we'll probably start seeing some Brash beers hit the grocery stores, which I'm super excited about. It's a very unique brewery that I don't ever want to leave. I know people have mixed feelings about it, but I think that will only be an upgrade, bringing back the original head brewer to bring back some of the magic they had back in the day. So I think some of these are pretty solid moves.
I think the question that needs to be answered is Brash going to keep whoever runs their social media? Is that person staying on board?
You mean, are they going to hold like satanic worships in the new business regime? I mean, we did talk about how Sigma rebranded to Equal Parts to have like a more welcoming and inclusive environment, which is kind of the opposite of Brash. So it's going to be an interesting culture shift.
Yeah, which I wonder. So I'll be curious because I've talked about it on the podcast previously. Petrol Station was like one of the first, you know, real craft beer bars in Houston. That's kind of like where I got into craft beer, and that was been full of the guy that owned Brash as well. Now Petrol's gone, and now he sold Brash. So I'm curious if he's going to get back into the scene at some point. You'd think. I mean, it's kind of been his whole life. So I'm curious to see where he pops back up.
I mean, the guy seems to be an innovator, and it felt like Brash was kind of like, again, they weren't putting a lot of new energy into their stuff. And so I think, again, it will be a positive for Brash, and maybe it's a positive for him to go out and be able to be a brand new entrepreneur again somewhere else.
Yeah.
All right. So that wraps up the Beering Ain't Easy edition of Houston Gossip. And so now we'll pause for a word from our sponsors. If you're hanging out on the north side of Houston, you've got to check out the Farm Drinkery. It's an awesome dive bar located in Spring off of Champions Forest in Louetta. They've got 22 beers on tap, which you know what that means. They are representing the H-Town beer scene. But that's not all. They got great food too. My personal recommendation is to try out the world-famous wings. But the only thing better than an awesome new dive bar is a beer and food discount. You heard it. Beering Ain't Easy podcast listeners can go in and give the code BeerNerd20 for 20% off your bill. That's BeerNerd20 for 20% off. Come for the great atmosphere and stay for the free high fives. So before we go to our next segment, I've just got to say I'm actually finishing this 14% ABV stout, and it is still delicious. They always talk about Brash beers being like burnt Folgers coffee, but this one's got like vanilla, which I love vanilla on the stout. So I still am always a big fan of this one, but it is a big stout. And so I am very happy to crack open this lager beer. Any thoughts on the beers you've had so far?
I'm through the hazy IPA and have a decent start on the wheat beer. They're both solid. I can't act like I haven't tried these. I had them while I was in Florida. These are just the leftovers that I brought back. Although I was getting over a stomach bug when I was drinking them in Florida, so they're definitely more enjoyable now than they were at the time.
That takes dedication to still drink when you have a stomach bug. It's like, you know what? My stomach's already on the fritz. I'm just going to throw a little alcohol in the mix, see if it makes it better.
I was like, I think I feel okay. I'm gonna give this a shot. I'm gonna try to push through it, and it just like, nah, it didn't work.
So random topics. I don't know why this is the way my brain works. I was thinking about stomach illness, and I was thinking about that we're recording this on July 3rd, and tomorrow morning is the annual hot dog eating contest that happens every 4th of July. Joey Chestnut is going to go in and defend his record. But I don't know if you've heard, but this year he's on crutches. So he's going to be doing the competition with an injury. So what are your predictions, Ryan? Do you think he's going to break his own record again? Or are the crutches going to like mess up the angle at which he eats his hot dogs?
I seem to have an image of my head of Joey Chestnut just drenched, soaking wet, pounding hot dogs and like turning his face up towards the sky and like hopping up and down to try to get hot dogs down. And he's not going to be able to really do that with crutches. But at this point, I think he's so head and shoulders above everybody else that I think he still pulls it down on one leg. It's his Michael Jordan flu game.
He's the hot dog goat.
So I used to do a white elephant thing every year. And my contribution to the white elephant the last year that I was supposed to do it, I bought an autographed Joey Chestnut like picture, like an 8x11 picture, and with like a full like certificate of authenticity and everything. And then that party got canceled, and this was like 5 or 6 years ago. And that party got canceled, and I still have it to this day. It's just like in its packaging that it got shipped in. It's just like in a closet somewhere.
You need to pull that out. We're going to take a picture of it and we're going to post it on social media so everyone can see, and only if you have the certificate of authenticity with it.
Yeah, I'll go try to find it.
It needs to be framed in your house, to be honest.
It really should be. It'll go right next to my like Jadeveon Clowney and Dallas Keuchel, my prized autograph pictures.
Yes. Just get Kobayashi too, and then you got the dynamic duo. All right, so Ryan, at the beginning of the episode, we discussed that we are inevitably on the way to a recession, whether it's the end of this year, the end of next year. It's coming. I can feel it. Beer Ain't Easy podcast is never wrong. We're the Nostradamus of beer podcasts. So in a recession, what do you think the impact is going to be on craft beer? Because when I think about it, most other recessions that we've had, you think about the recession of 2008, which craft beer was kind of going then. You've got the 1980s, you've got the Great Depression, but we don't have a lot of data points on the craft beer industry in recession. So we want to know, what do you think is going to happen, and what is the key to success to surviving it?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to my head when you say that is like hops are by far your most expensive ingredient, right? So I would say, yeah, if it's a recession and people are buying less and companies are trying to save money, you'd think they'd go to, non-hoppy styles, go to, your lagers, which are already kind of making a comeback right now. So you stick with the lagers, maybe like pale ales and like, ambers, so like ambers, reds, some of the maltier stuff that doesn't take so much hops to kind of balance out. So just, I guess, a shift generally to just lighter beers is that's my gut reaction. What do you think?
So, yeah, that was my thought too, because I know when you start getting into the hops and you start getting into specialty malts and you start getting into the high ABV beers, the cost of the beer goes up. So those light lagers, low ABV, you can make them cheaper, but don't some of those also take longer to brew, like your Pilsners and things like that? Do they hold up your tanks longer, or am I getting that wrong?
They generally do, yeah. The other issue is I like lagers is you got to ferment them cold, so you're using your glycol loops and running your chiller a lot more to keep it at temperature. So I guess there's a little bit of overhead cost with that, but I think generally it's not too bad. So yeah, it can tie up your tanks. The other thing that I thought of while you were talking is you can do like like rice loggers or like Mexican loggers that use like corn as adjuncts, like basically rice and corn as additional supplements to lower your material costs.
Yeah, when I was looking at this on Google, all these homebrew websites came up, and it was like, how can you make the cheapest beer possible and still not taste like ass? It was a lot of like talking about rice and things like that you can add in. It was funny.
Yeah, we were on vacation in Colorado one year, and we went on a tour of the Coors facility, and they were talking about how they like to add. They started adding rice back in the day to the original recipe because they thought it gave it a nice crisp. And we kind of looked at each other and we're like, because it gave it a nice crisp, because it's way cheaper.
Yeah, see right through you. So my hot takes aren't about the style of beer that you're making, but it's about the tips and tricks that a brewery can do. And so my first thought is that they always say that alcohol is a recession-proof industry because people are going to drink when they're happy, they're going to drink when they're sad, they're going to drink all the time. And so why not drink during a recession? So there's that. But the last time we had a recession, they talked about moving to liquor because you can get a cheaper buzz quickly versus going to a higher dollar wines and luxury items. And I think craft beer is probably considered a luxury item. So there's probably some adjustments they need to make, right? So my thoughts are, there's not a lot of breweries that do this, but I think that they need to go sell in bulk. So I think Eureka Heights is the one that I think of where they've sold some of their craft beer as a 30 pack. And maybe people will see the value in that. They'll see the bulk and they'll be like, hey, I still want to have a good drink, but I don't want to just throw my money away at $25 for a 4-pack. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I know, like, especially during the summers, we buy all day a lot, and those come in 15 packs, and it's relatively cheap compared to like buying the 6 packs or even 12 packs of it. I know another thing that, speaking of bulk sales, is Eighth Wonder sells some of their beers in like the little mini kegs that like have a little tap built into it. That seems like it's an expensive thing to do, so I don't know the economics of it, but something like that could be interesting. I know one of the things that's hard to come by right now is cans, and that's a pretty big expense. So I was just trying to think of ways to get away from the whole can thing, which kind of brings to mind growlers, right? Like growlers, I feel like have gone out of favor, but maybe promoting growler fills or something at the tap room is a good way to, get your beer out there without having to pay for packaging.
I like it. And I'll link it to our episode, but I found this article that was showing the breakdown of why the average craft beer 6-pack is $12 or more, and distribution was like 20% of the profit. So if you can cut out the distributor and get people into your tap room to fill a growler, then now we're talking some real profit margins there.
That's true. Yeah. And yeah, it used to be with TABC laws that, you had to go through a distributor. It was only a couple of years ago that they started doing the tap room to go sales. So, I mean, they typically sell for the same price you could find at the store, but if push came to shove, they don't have that distributor cost. They could offer sales.
Yeah. The other thought I had was around the actual experience. And I was like, sometimes you throw an event and you bring in a concert or like live music and you're paying a lot for the band and you really don't make a lot of money other than the exposure for your brewery. So maybe it will be less about these big splashy tap rooms and big splashy events and more about the beer and getting people in like reasonably priced beer and still feel like they're having a good time. So like cheap entertainment.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna use this opportunity to force in a Eureka Heights reference as I am known to do. I know Eureka Heights every year does they do stuff like they have a dad joke competition where it's just like tournament style, like open entry. Anyone can come in and enter this competition, and it draws a ton of people. So that might be a silver lining is making breweries come up with really creative events to draw people in that don't take any real capital investment. It doesn't like cost them any money to put it on. So it'd be interesting to see what people come up with.
If you're listening, Eureka Heights, Ryan is looking to be a brand ambassador. But I do think you had a good point back to like the types of beer. There's a lot of breweries that are chasing these like super exclusive hops. And right now it's all about the phantasm. I mean, people are spending ridiculous amounts of money to say that they're making a phantasm powder IPA. So maybe we just stick a fork in that kind of crap. What do you think, Ryan?
I'd be cool with that. I don't really know the inner workings of it, but from what I understand, is that phantasm powder is so hard to come by that only a few like exclusive breweries can actually get their hands on it. So if you see like a not like household name brewery brewing with it, chances are they just know somebody else in the industry that they got it from, but they weren't able to just go buy it.
You know, I haven't seen any Houston breweries promote a Phantasm IPA, but I did notice the other day that Laser Brewing, which is the home brewer, so they're making ultra small batches, got a couple packets of that. So if you're lucky enough to get on that lottery, you get your 1 can of Phantasm here shortly.
Just a little inside joke that nobody else will know.
There was an inside joke there, so we gotta bring it up. So Laser Brewing, they make these awesome homebrew beers, and I'd never they give away a certain amount of beers on a raffle, and I didn't know how it worked, and I was like, I'm going to put myself in the raffle, and so I won it, and I knew Ryan was going to be closer to the location of pickup, and I was like, hey Ryan, why don't you go pick up that beer? Not realizing like the quantity of beers that they give out. Which makes sense. You're giving it out for free, so you can't expect them to give out a case. But I was thinking maybe a 4-pack. And so I sent Ryan over there, and he shows up, and it was a single can. Ryan drove like 30 miles to get a single can of beer. And it was great. It made the beer more worthwhile.
Yeah, and yeah, to be fair, I waited till the next weekend when I was with Drew and we split it, and it was worth it. I'll just say that it was really good.
So now every time we do a beer pickup, I'm always saying that Ryan's going to be the one that picks it up because it's a single can. So we mentioned, the food trucks versus the restaurant. So that's a big recession idea, is to get out of the restaurant business. Any other ideas you got, Ryan, to close us out on what your behaviors will be during the recession and what everyone else's should be?
I don't know, man. This will be a new experience for me. I don't think I've gone through a recession as a craft beer drinker, so I'll be curious to see how it affects me or not. What are your thoughts?
I, for one, am going to cut other spending aspects of my life before I cut craft beer.
That's pretty. That's kind of what I was dancing around. I was like, it's not going to affect me because I refuse to give up that part of my life. I was like, maybe we'll start home brewing together to cut our drinking costs.
Hell yeah! All right. On that note, we have exhausted our topics on the Houston beer scene, and we've dabbled in the recession. And as we said, we're not looking to cut back on our craft beer business. So we're hoping for no more sales, because we're going to keep all the breweries in Houston alive. You want to take us home, Ryan?
Yeah, I thought I'd take this opportunity to make a little announcement. We've been talking about all these brewery sales, but we haven't touched on podcast sales. So we'd just like to let everyone know that from now on, we will be known as the Beering Ain't Easy podcast, presented by AB InBev.
We'll see y'all next time. This has been a Beering Ain't Easy production out of Houston, Texas. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook, or at our website at crossthestreamsmedia.com, where you can find our podcast and all the other great sister podcasts on our network.
This has been a Cross the Streams Media Podcast.